I died on a Tuesday, crushed under the wheels of a delivery truck while crossing the street after the worst day of my professional life. My last thought wasn't about my parents or my dreams or any of that poetic garbage. It was about Marcus Chen's smug face as he took credit for my 18-month project. Then I woke up. Not in a hospital, not in heaven or hell. I woke up in my old apartment in my old bed, and my phone alarm was screaming at me with a date that made my blood run cold. June 14th, 2022. 18 months before my death. The exact day I closed the Silverton deal. I sat up so fast I nearly vomited. My hands, they were younger, the small scar from last year's kitchen accident gone. My body felt different, lighter, like I'd shed years of accumulated exhaustion. But my mind was full, packed with memories that hadn't happened yet. Memories of betrayal, exploitation, and ultimately, my pointless death. The Silverton deal. Randall Silverton, tech mogul, notoriously difficult client. I'd spent 18 months cultivating that relationship, attending his charity galas, learning about his vintage car collection, memorizing his children's names. I'd structured a commercial real estate package worth $47 million. My commission alone would be $470,000. In my previous life, I'd walked into the office that morning floating on air. By noon, my boss Marcus had called me into his office with that practiced, sympathetic expression he used before he screwed you over. "Jenna, I need to talk to you about the Silverton contract." I checked my phone. 7:47 a.m. I had 2 hours and 13 minutes before that conversation. 2 hours and 13 minutes before Marcus would tell me that, for the good of the company and to maintain client relationships at the executive level, he would be taking over as the primary agent on the deal, that he'd still let me keep a 2% finder's fee, $94,000 instead of $470,000, that I should be grateful for the opportunity to learn. In my first life, I'd said yes. I'd swallowed my rage because I needed the job, needed the money, needed the reference. I'd watched Marcus take credit for my work, watched him buy a Tesla with my commission, watched him get promoted to VP while I stayed a senior agent. And then, 6 months later, the deal had gone south anyway. Silverton had discovered structural issues with one of the properties, issues Marcus had overlooked because he didn't know the deal like I did. The client had demanded modifications that Marcus bungled. Eventually, Silverton had walked away entirely, and Marcus had blamed me for not flagging potential problems. But I had flagged them. In emails Marcus never read. In memos he'd deleted. I had the receipts, but by then, who cared? Marcus was VP. I was expendable. Not this time. I got dressed slowly, deliberately. I chose my gray pantsuit, the one that made me look serious, professional, unapproachable. I pulled my hair back tight. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Same face, but different eyes, eyes that had seen how this story ended. The office was exactly as I remembered. Glass and chrome, fake plants, motivational posters that made me want to set things on fire. My desk sat in the bullpen with the other senior agents, while Marcus enjoyed his corner office with the view. "Jenna, hey!" My coworker Amy bounced over, coffee in hand. "I heard about Silverton. Congrats! That commission is going to be insane." In my first life, I'd grinned and thanked her, tried to play it cool. Now I just smiled tightly. "We'll see." "What do you mean? The contract's signed, right?" "Signed this morning. Just waiting for the wire transfer to clear." Amy squealed, "Girl, you're going to be rich. You have to let me take you out to celebrate." I'd liked Amy. She was one of the few people in this office who hadn't been actively terrible. But she was also best friends with Marcus's secretary, and in my previous life, she'd been the one to cheerfully tell me that Marcus deserved the commission because he's been here longer. "Maybe," I said. "I have a feeling today's going to be complicated." At 9:47 a.m., Marcus's secretary, Kelly, appeared at my desk. "Marcus wants to see you." Here we go. Marcus's office smelled like expensive cologne and entitlement. He sat behind his mahogany desk, the one he'd had custom made last year, and gestured for me to sit. I remained standing. "Jenna, thanks for coming in." He smiled, and I wanted to break his teeth. "I wanted to talk to you about the Silverton deal." "What about it?" "Well, first, Congratulations, really impressive work. He paused, waiting for me to thank him or show gratitude. I just stared. The thing is, a deal of this magnitude requires a certain level of executive oversight. Silverton is a high-value client, and we need to make sure the relationship is managed at the appropriate level. I've been managing it for 18 months. Of course, of course. And you've done a great job getting us to this point. But now that we're at the execution phase, I think it's best if I take over as the primary contact. You understand, it's about optics. Silverton needs to see that we're taking his business seriously. By replacing the agent he's been working with for a year and a half? Marcus's smile tightened. Not replacing, elevating. I'll be the senior agent on the file. You'll still be involved naturally. And my commission? He leaned back, trying to look regretful. That's the thing. Since I'll be taking on the primary responsibility and risk, the commission structure needs to reflect that. But I've spoken to accounting, and we can definitely get you a finder's fee. 2% is standard. 2%. $94,000, Jenna. That's still a life-changing amount of money for someone at your level. Someone at my level. In my first life, that phrase had haunted me for months. No, I said. Marcus blinked. Excuse me? No, I'm not giving up my commission. His expression shifted from surprise to annoyance. Jenna, I don't think you understand. This isn't a negotiation. This is what's best for the company and what's best for your career here. If you want to move up, you need to be a team player. I am a team player. I played for 18 months. I closed the deal. The commission is mine. The commission belongs to the firm, Marcus said, his voice hardening. We decide how it's distributed. And I've decided that given my role in it, your role? You've never even met Randall Silverton. That's not the point. The point is you want my money. I leaned forward, hands on his desk. You want to steal 18 months of my work because you know I can't fight back without tanking my career. Marcus stood up. I think you need to take a walk, cool down, and think very carefully about what you're saying. Because right now you're being insubordinate and unprofessional. I'm being honest. You're being stupid. He said it quietly, viciously. You think you're special? You think one big deal makes you untouchable? I can bury you, Jenna. I can make sure you never work in this city again. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to accept the finder's fee with a smile, you're going to thank me for the opportunity, and you're going to learn how things actually work around here. In my first life, that threat had worked. I'd been terrified, desperate, alone. I'd taken the finder's fee and hated myself for it. But I'd lived through the consequences. I knew how this story ended, and I had nothing left to lose. Okay, I said. Marcus blinked again, surprised by my sudden capitulation. Okay? Yeah, you want the commission? Take it. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. You might want to actually read the contract, though. Silverton's particular about details. I know how to read a contract, Jenna. Sure you do. I walked out and went straight back to my desk. My hands were shaking, not with fear, but with anticipation. Because I remembered exactly what happened next in the original timeline. In my first life, Marcus had taken over the Silverton account with arrogant confidence. He'd treated Silverton like just another rich client, schmoozing and glad-handing without understanding the nuances of the deal. And 6 months later, it had all fallen apart. But I wasn't going to wait 6 months this time. I pulled up my personal email, the one the office didn't monitor, and started typing. I had 18 months of inside knowledge about Randall Silverton, his preferences, his pet peeves, his absolute deal breakers. More importantly, I knew exactly what Marcus was going to do wrong. Silverton hated being handled. He hated fake friendliness, ass-kissing, and people who didn't respect his time. He especially hated people who didn't honor their commitments. I'd made him a lot of promises over 18 months. Personal promises. that I would be his primary contact, that I would personally oversee every aspect of the deal, that he wouldn't be passed around like a football. Marcus was about to break all of them. I drafted an email to Silverton's personal assistant, a sharp woman named Gloria, who I'd cultivated a genuine friendship with. In my first life, she'd been sympathetic but powerless when Marcus took over. Hi, Gloria. Just a heads up. There might be some changes on our end with your account. My boss, Marcus Chen, is taking over as the primary agent. I wanted to let you know in case Mr. Silverton has any concerns about continuity. I know he values consistency in his business relationships. I'll still be involved behind the scenes, but Marcus will be your main point of contact going forward. Best, Jenna. I hit send and waited. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown number. This is Jenna. Jenna, it's Gloria. Mr. Silverton wants to speak with you. My heart hammered. Put him through. Jenna. Randall Silverton's voice was cool, controlled. Gloria tells me there's been a change in representation. Mr. Silverton, I spent 18 months working with you. You convinced me to sign with your firm specifically because you promised me continuity and personal attention? Was that a lie? No, sir, it wasn't my decision. My boss felt that I don't care what your boss felt. I made a deal with you, not him. Is this how your company operates? Bait and switch? I took a breath. This was the moment. Mr. Silverton, I understand your frustration. I advocated to remain your primary contact, but I was overruled. If you're not comfortable with the change, I completely understand if you want to reconsider the arrangement. Silence, then. Reconsider? The deal hasn't funded yet. If you're not satisfied with the level of service, you have every right to walk away. I would never hold that against you. More silence. I could practically hear him thinking. I'll be in touch, he said, and hung up. I sat back in my chair, adrenaline singing through my veins. In my first life, I'd never made that call. I'd never planted that seed of doubt. I'd just accepted my fate and watched everything crumble slowly. But now I'd just lit the fuse. The bomb went off at 2:34 p.m. Kelly appeared at my desk, her face pale. Marcus wants to see you, now. I walked to his office where Marcus stood by the window, phone in hand, looking like he'd swallowed glass. What did you do? He hissed. I don't know what you mean. Silverton just called. He's pulling out of the deal. He said. Marcus checked his phone, reading from what must have been an email. He said he has concerns about the firm's integrity and commitment to client relationships. He's demanding a full refund of his deposit and threatening to report us to the state licensing board for fraudulent business practices. I let my eyebrows rise in fake surprise. What? Why? Why? Because you called him. Because you poisoned him against me. I sent a courtesy email to his assistant letting them know about the change in representation. I thought that was the professional thing to do. Bullshit, you sabotaged me. Mr. Silverton is a sophisticated client who values personal relationships. You took over his account without his consent. What did you think would happen? Marcus's face was turning purple. You vindictive little... This is your fault. You're going to fix this. How? You're the primary agent now. You fix it. Call him. Tell him it was a misunderstanding. Tell him you're still on the account. But I'm not, am I? You made that very clear this morning. I tilted my head. What was it you said? The commission belongs to the firm? Well, so does the responsibility. If this deal falls apart, it's on you. I'll make sure everyone knows it was your fault. Try it, I said calmly. I have 18 months of emails documenting my relationship with Silverton. I have records of every promise I made him, promises I intended to keep until you forced me off the account. If he complains to the licensing board, they're going to see that you took over a client relationship without proper transition and against the client's wishes. That's not my failure. It's yours. Marcus stared at me like he'd never seen me before. You're finished here? Maybe, but so are you. I walked out of his office for the second time that day. This time, I went straight to HR. Sarah Kemper, our HR director, was a brittle woman who'd risen through the ranks by never rocking the boat. In my first life, I'd never reported Marcus because I knew she wouldn't help me. She'd protect the company, which meant protecting Marcus. But now I had leverage. Sarah, I need to file a formal complaint, I said, sitting down across from her. She looked up from her computer with barely concealed irritation. Regarding? Marcus Chen attempted to coerce me into giving up a commission I earned. When I refused, he threatened my career. And now that the client is unhappy with the forced change in representation, Marcus is trying to blame me for his mismanagement. Sarah's expression didn't change. That's a serious accusation. I have emails, time-stamped documentation, and I assume the phone records will show that Mr. Silverton called Marcus, not me. What exactly do you want, Jenna? I want it on record that I'm not responsible for the Silverton deal falling apart. I want protection from retaliation. And I want to make sure that if Marcus tries to fire me or damage my reputation, there are consequences. Sarah studied me for a long moment. You know Marcus is up for VP, right? This could derail his promotion. That's not my concern. My concern is protecting myself from a manager who tried to steal my commission and is now using me as a scapegoat. I'll look into it, Sarah said, which meant she'd do the bare minimum and hope I went away. I didn't care. I'd planted another seed. Over the next 3 days, the Silverton deal imploded spectacularly. Randall Silverton didn't just pull out, he burned the bridge behind him. He sent a formal letter to our CEO detailing his dissatisfaction with the unprofessional and unethical behavior of our firm. He posted a review on industry forums warning other high-value clients about our business practices. He even called a friend at a local business journal, and suddenly there was a story about bait-and-switch tactics in commercial real estate. The firm had to refund his $500,000 deposit. But the damage went deeper than money. Marcus, who'd been a lock for VP, was suddenly radioactive. The CEO called him into a closed-door meeting that lasted 2 hours. When Marcus emerged, he looked like he'd aged a decade. The official story was that Marcus had failed to properly manage a key client relationship. The unofficial story, whispered around the office, was that he'd fucked up a sure thing because he was too arrogant to do his homework. Some people blamed me. Amy stopped talking to me. A few of the other agents gave me dirty looks. I didn't care. I'd lived through being liked and exploited. Being disliked and free was better. But the real satisfaction came 2 weeks later. I was at my desk updating my resume because I was going to leave this toxic place on my own terms when Kelly appeared again. Marcus wants to see you. I almost laughed. What could he possibly want now? His office looked different. The personal items were gone. No photos, no awards, no custom nameplate. Just empty shelves and bare walls. Marcus sat behind his desk, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked defeated. "They're letting me go," he said without preamble. I didn't say anything. Silverton's complaint triggered an internal review. They found other things. Other agents who felt I'd been unfair. Other deals where I'd taken credit for their work. He laughed bitterly. Funny how that works? One domino falls and suddenly everyone's brave enough to come forward. Why am I here, Marcus? Because I need to know. He looked up at me and there was something desperate in his eyes. Did you plan this? Did you know Silverton would pull out? I could have lied. Could have pretended it was just bad luck, unfortunate timing, but I was so tired of pretending. Yes, I said simply. His face went white. How? I knew Silverton, really knew him. You never bothered to learn what he cared about. You just saw a commission check. I leaned against the doorframe. You taught me a valuable lesson, Marcus. You taught me that loyalty and hard work don't matter. That in this business, it's all about leverage and self-interest. So I used what I learned. You destroyed my career. No, you destroyed your career when you decided to steal from me. I just made sure there were consequences. Marcus stood up, hands shaking. You're going to regret this. You think you're so smart? You think you're untouchable? I'm going to make sure every firm in this city knows what you did. Go ahead, I said. Tell them I refused to let you steal my commission. Tell them I maintained client loyalty. Tell them I documented everything and protected myself when you tried to scapegoat me. I'm sure that'll make you look great. I turned to leave. I could have made you, Marcus called after me. You could have learned from me, moved up, become a VP yourself, but you had to be stubborn. I looked back at him one last time. You couldn't teach me anything I didn't already know. I just had to die to figure that out. The confusion on his face was perfect. 3 months later, I was working at a boutique firm that actually valued their agents. My new boss, Catherine, was tough but fair. She didn't steal commissions. She didn't play favorites. She just expected excellence and rewarded it accordingly. I'd closed 2 major deals in my first 60 days. My income had tripled, and I'd started building a reputation as the agent who didn't fuck around. I heard through the grapevine that Marcus was working for a strip mall real estate office in the suburbs, selling retail space to vape shops and nail salons. His Tesla got repossessed. His wife left him. He threatened to sue our old firm for wrongful termination, but the documentation Sarah had uncovered during the investigation killed that idea pretty quickly. I should have felt more satisfaction. In my first life, I'd fantasized endlessly about Marcus getting what he deserved. I'd imagined elaborate revenge scenarios where he suffered the way he'd made me suffer. But actually living through it felt different. It felt necessary, like lancing an infected wound. It felt right, but it didn't feel euphoric. Maybe that was the point. Real revenge wasn't about emotional catharsis. It was about correction, about making sure the person who wronged you couldn't do it again. I thought a lot about my death in those months, about the delivery truck and my last moments, about whether this was all real or just some dying dream my brain had constructed. But then I'd wake up in my apartment, go to work, close another deal. I'd deposit another commission check and watch my bank account grow. I'd get coffee with Catherine and talk about industry trends. I'd live my life. And whether it was real or not didn't matter, because this life was better. One day, almost a year after the Silverton implosion, I ran into Marcus at a networking event. I almost didn't recognize him. He'd lost weight, looked older, wore a cheaper suit. He saw me and his expression cycled through hate, shame, and resignation in about 3 seconds. Jenna, he said, but Marcus. An awkward pause, then. I heard you're doing well. I am. Good, that's good. He looked like he wanted to say more, but couldn't find the words. I could have twisted the knife, could have told him about my corner office or my 6-figure commission from last month. Could have made sure he knew exactly how much better I was doing, but I didn't need to. Take care of yourself, Marcus, I said, and walked away. Because that was the real power of rebirth. Not the revenge, not the satisfaction of watching your enemies fall. The real power was living well, building something better, becoming someone who didn't need to steal or cheat or sabotage because they were good enough on their own merit. Marcus had taught me to be ruthless. Death had taught me to be free. And the combination made me unstoppable. 6 months later, I signed the biggest commercial real estate deal in the state, a mixed-use development worth $200 million. My commission was $2.4 million. The client specifically requested me. He said he'd heard I was an agent who kept her promises. I thought about Marcus when I deposited that check. I wondered if he'd heard about it. I wondered if he lay awake at night thinking about the commission he could have had if he'd just been a decent human being. Then I stopped wondering and went shopping for my dream house. Because that was the thing about rebirth. It gave you a second chance to get it right. Not just to avoid mistakes, but to build something better than you'd imagined possible. I'd died at 32, broke and broken. My potential wasted by people who'd seen me as a resource to exploit. I'd been reborn at 30, with all my memories intact and all my naivety burned away. And I'd used that gift not just for revenge, though the revenge had been sweet, but for resurrection. Marcus had tried to bury me. Instead, he'd planted a seed. And I'd grown into something he could never touch. Some people say karma takes too long, that justice delayed is justice denied, that bad people thrive while good people suffer. They're not wrong. In my first life, Marcus won. He got the promotion, the money, the glory, and I got nothing but bitterness and regret. But in this life, in this beautiful, impossible second chance, I got everything, and he lost it all. Not because of karma, not because of justice, but because I made it happen. Because I knew his weaknesses, I knew his patterns, I knew exactly what buttons to push to make him destroy himself. The universe didn't give me justice. I took it, and it tasted better than I'd ever imagined. The last time I thought about Marcus was 2 years after my rebirth. I was standing in my new house, a modern masterpiece with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, hosting a party for my team. 20 agents who worked with me, not for me. People I trusted and respected. Catherine raised her glass. To Jenna, who built something incredible in record time. The youngest partner in firm history. Everyone cheered. I smiled, took a sip of champagne, and felt the last traces of my old life fade away. I'd been reborn for a reason, not to relive my trauma or wallow in what ifs, but to prove that sometimes the universe does offer second chances. You just have to be brave enough to take them, and ruthless enough to make them count.